Thank you for joining us today. My name is Matt Schmitt, and I'm the ServiceNow's Mission Account Manager for our Navy and Marine Corps. ServiceNow is a world-class automation engine helping out the Dawn in both mission and business operations. The world works with ServiceNow. Welcome to our session today entitled Supporting the Warfighter Today. Our fireside chat will be with Dave McDonald, CIO Plans and Programs for NCTAMS PAC. And we're going to explore a little bit how the command's approach to modernizing has been evolving to meet mission needs and mandates. Mr. McDonald, thank you for joining us today.
Hey Matt, thank you, and call me Dave. It's good to be online with you, and glad to have a chance to talk about some of our challenges with data, with services, with applications, and people and processes. So excited to be here.
I appreciate you joining us, sir. If you wouldn't mind, can you provide us a little bit about your role and areas of responsibility over at NCTAMS PAC?
Yeah, sure. I am the Command Information Officer, the CIO, and Plans and Programs Director for the Navy Computer and Telecommunications Area Master Station Pacific. So it's important right up front. I say in this role, not speaking from a policy perch or programmatic or resources perch for the Department of the Navy. It's kind of a sidebar. I love to have conversations with industry. Also, I'll say, Matt, you'll appreciate this. Not endorsing ServiceNow, but we've really enjoyed working with you guys for the last year, and look forward to doing some more of that. So in my role, I look across the Pacific Hemisphere. NCTAMS PAC and our aligned organizations do Navy and joint telecommunications, IT, cyber defense, and a few other things for the Department of Defense, for the warfighter on this side of the world. It spans the gamut from IP networks, radio transmitter facilities, messaging and data application services, base communication services, a lot of that stuff that's in the ground, right? Fiber, copper, microwave across our bases and stations across the Pacific Hemisphere. So it's a big enterprise, and among the things I do is kind of look current and future at our missions, systems, resourcing, and our overall readiness to perform those missions for the warfighter.
Well, I appreciate that, sir, and that's excellent. So I said you've been around technology, give or take, for over 40 plus years, and I said we really wanted to get an understanding from you. What challenges are you seeing in the NCTAMS PAC landscape now versus maybe say 10 years ago for modernization?
Yeah, so the challenges never end. So in my current role, I've been up at NCTAMS for about 16 years, but my career history goes back to being a deck plate cryptologist on submarines, at mission operations at various field stations around the world. So I've been in touch with technology for that 40-year career so far. It's my perspective that you're kind of always in a perfect storm of change, right? But in certain times more than others, right? I think we're in a stage now where there's this kind of exponential explosion of potential driven by so many factors in technology: compute power, bandwidth and network robustness, resilience, the competitive factors in our economy and in the world economy, technology and research and development in chips, in various form factors, from power, batteries, mobility, the ability to bring the size, weight, and power of a lot of these form factors down to some really compelling levels, such that ubiquity of mobility, ubiquity of high compute services is kind of exploding, right? So we're in this phase right now where the DoD, the Department of the Navy, and so forth, we got to think about making sure we can, to use a nautical phrase, can come up alongside of industry and at least try to keep pace, and not sort of watch you go out over the horizon and disappear from us, as we kind of cling to our legacy capabilities from 10, 15, 20 years ago or more. So we're really in this perfect storm of change with technology right now.
Sounds like you've got a lot going on out there. When you talk about sort of, versus the way you've always done it in the past? Like I said, trying to expand your horizon, to go alongside industry. Can you give us some examples of that? Like, when I look at this, what type of issues that were maybe manual processes in the past that you're trying to go forward and say, we need to stay on pace with what industry is doing, keep them in the horizon.
Yeah, I think there's some really key areas, certainly that we care about in our line of work, provisioning telecommunications, IT, and cyber defense services across this vast piece of geography that is the Indo-Pacific. So I always like to go down stack, right? Go down to layer one and transport the first 1, 2, 3 layers of the classic OSI stack. Transport, right? Bandwidth. A long time ago, a smart engineer taught me, keep in mind, McDonald, as you go through your career, whatever the question might be, there's a great likelihood that bandwidth is the answer. So that's one key area of technology, is you got to be able to move the information, you got to be able to move the applications, move the services, move the data, move the security infrastructure in a way that doesn't clobber the user experience. So transport is a big deal, whether it's commercial space, 5G, next G, other modalities, even like Li-Fi and laser and optical, free space optical. Those technologies really have a compelling sort of aspect to them, I think, that are going to set up as game changers for the things we have to do in the future. If you get those things right, Matt, if you get transport and bandwidth and communication services right, everything you aspire to do up stack in data applications, big data, security infrastructure, zero trust, all those things get exponentially easier if the infrastructure is there. So I always kind of like to start there, and in some ways remind a lot of our senior decision makers that you better get transport right, because all the other things you aspire to do rely upon that.
Absolutely. And I said, having the bandwidth allows everything else to move, allowing you to take chance and be able to move some of this, what I call manual type items, moving to automation, moving them forward from that path. So,
and by the way, Matt, I include in that, just to use the term broadly, I include compute power, right? And distributed compute power, right? Edge and distributed compute power. That's all part of that kind of bandwidth equation. I'm using the term sort of a little more broadly than a lot of people might think about it.
Nope. No, I appreciate that. Thank you, sir. So how about, if you can, share with me an example of how you've looked at sort of some of these processes. You've got the bandwidth figured out. You've got some of that pipe figured out. You've got some of the compute power figured out. What sort of processes are you looking at and say, okay, going out to your team, say, how do we modernize this? How do we do this, both from a people standpoint, from a tool standpoint, and then making sure that it's in place to keep moving forward?
Yeah, great question. There's lots to unpack there, but I'll dial in on a couple things. So I love innovation. I love R&D. We're very much a part of some very compelling R&D and innovation efforts. But I'm also a bit of I'll call it a curmudgeonly critic of the valley of death, right? Of so many research and development and innovation and experimentation programs, projects, and platforms that all kind of systemically and very predictably, fall their way into the valley of death. So I think, to your question, thinking about this broadly and completely about how do you leverage those game-changing, real transformational technologies? How do you then put the leadership commitment, the resourcing commitment, and the staying power into it to navigate those things out of the valley of death, field them, sustain them, man and train them, adopt them in terms of your processes and your culture, lead them, and sort of get the full return on investment of the most transformational technologies. That's, I've said, somewhat shooting for effect, that anybody with a checkbook and a research lab behind them can do experimentation, right? Can do R&D. It takes real gumption to figure out how to take the most successful experimental projects and then transform them into something at scale, and then to adopt them broadly in an organization's mission or enterprise's mission, and then deal with the human factors, the sustainment tail, the cybersecurity and information assurance compliance tail, and all the other things you have to be able to do to sort of achieve the real benefit of that investment over years, right? That's the hard part, right? And I am shooting for effect when I say anybody can do R&D. That's hard too, but what's wickedly hard is scale, sustainment, and operational adoption.
And I look at, when I hear you say that, sir, I think a lot about how you do that with your people. I said how you're empowering your people to be able to get out and look over that ledge and say, we need to be able to take that first step. We need to be able, once we're going down these pilot phases, once we're doing these types of work, how do we take that second step and third step? And so, can you talk a little bit about how you empower your department for change and how you empower them to really modernize their cultural way of thinking to succeed and grow based on some of these challenges that you're seeing?
Yeah, so some of this is very nuanced and tricky. Other parts of it really aren't. Is to put hopefully a kind of a rather simple point on it. You kind of get what you invest in in regard to that. An organization that wants to strike a really good balance between innovation and kind of what I would think of as a user-centered design or spiral development, or the term of the day is DevSecOps or SecOps type of delivery of innovation, but also balance that with a smart, disciplined adoption. You have to invest in that as an operational organization. You have to invest in being sort of on the ops side of DevOps, if that makes sense, Matt, right? And it doesn't come for free, right? It takes work, it takes leadership commitment, and it takes a level of investment in having the sort of subject matter expertise, close at hand, that can really assist you and your entire workforce with the smart adoption and integration of transformational technologies. A lot of people who naysay on this, they will say those are disruptive technologies, and some mean it in a good way, and others say, well, the last thing we need right now is disruption, right? So leaders have to make the investment in managing disruption, managing that disruption to transformation, and to achieving return on investment. At NCTAMS PAC and across our enterprise, we have a dedicated knowledge management team that, among their stock and trade, sort of contribution to the organization, they do this. And we're continuously learning our way into how to be a smart adopter of transformational technologies, but you got to balance it with some discipline, right?
Absolutely. And I said, what I'm hearing you say a lot there, sir, is that how are you managing that gray? How are you teaching your folks to manage that gray as well? Because I said, you're sending them off into the world and saying, okay, you bring back some ideas, you bring back some thoughts, you bring back some change that we can manage and we can use in our NCTAMS PAC environment.
Yeah, and this because ServiceNow and some of your partner industry players that bring certain applications and services within the ServiceNow ecosystem. It is foundationally transformational what you deliver to your team, to your clients, and your customers and partners out there. But you also know that quite often there's a lot of resistance. An organization that's been doing a certain thing a certain way for 10, 12, 15 years. And suddenly, you bring this really powerful new way of doing it, and they all look at the PowerPoint charts and they look at the demonstrations and say, oh, well, there's vastly better ways of doing this, But then the hard part hits, right? Is people actually have to train, they have to dig deep, they have to think about jettisoning, the legacy capability. You're turning their world upside down, right? And so there's a whole leadership element, and cultural element of that. How do you persuade people, kind of make your idea their idea, and guide and lead the adoption of something truly powerful, right? And it's a commitment, right? It doesn't happen overnight. Yeah.
Hey, change is hard, and it says hearts and minds.
Sure. That's right.
I appreciate you sharing a lot of this stuff, sir. I really do. I know we're going to be coming up close on time here. Any closing thoughts, like I said, on sort of the next steps for you over at NCTAMS PAC and sort of how you're looking at evolving to support the warfighter in the future?
Yeah, I think you framed it, pretty well right up front as we started the conversation, right? People, processes, and tools, and frankly, kind of in that order, right? And I don't want to say the technology or the tools are just incidental to the thing. All three of those are critically important to make transformation. But people, processes, and tools, if leaders think broadly and completely about those things and strike that right balance between, being up on the balls of your feet, moving forward, with innovation and real enthusiasm, but also, some discipline. And you got to know when to go slow in some places as well. Take your time and bring people along. If you're just bringing a bright, shiny object into your enterprise and the people and processes aren't coming along with it, you're going to waste money, time, and you're going to create cynicism. So that's how I think about this. To get at your last question, there is to steward these change initiatives across people, processes, and tools, and strike that balance between always looking forward to improvement, continuous improvement, but to do it with some discipline and some real thought, right? That's how I think about this for our enterprise.
Sir, I really appreciate your time and your partnership. I wish you the best as you continue on your journey out there with NCTAMS PAC. May you have fair winds and following seas, sir. Thank you very much.
You're learning fast, Matt. You got the Navy rubric down. Very good. We're training you well, and you're training us well as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.